Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Paradise Podcast Network. My name is Cory Paradise, and I will be your host for this evening. But before we get into the show, I just wanted to shout out my two co-hosts, Scott Borgstrom and Alfredo Garibay. They do a great job, and they're with me here every week. And once again, they're here this week to discuss Prey 2006. Hope you enjoy the show. We'll see you in the next episode. Guys, have either of you guys heard of Prey 2006? Or what is your extent of the title?
I just
Not
remember
even 06, just the IP of Prey.
Oh, just Prey in general.
I just remember the Prey game coming out, and you could be a juice box or something, and that was it. I never.
I mean, that's a good thing to hear about. You know, like I would rather hear that than be like, oh yeah, Prey's like the shittiest game known to man. You know, like oh, you could be a juice box, dude. Fucking sign me up, man.
Prey,
no,
game where you can.
I don't know, man. I've kind of heard the same thing where it's like you just kind of be anything with that. Was it DLC for the new one, right? It was like a new Prey or new DLC for Prey, something like that, where you could just transform into anything and like be what you want, right?
Yeah, that was in the newest one in Prey 2017.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a you gain superpowers through the game in its own, unique setting, and one of them is to be able to mimic or to become a piece of the environment, one of the things in the environment. So including juice boxes. That's kind of the meme, but in the game, I think the example they use the most in the game ends up being coffee mugs.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a whole sequence in the beginning of that game, and we kind of have the option here. We can either talk about Prey today and talk about Prey 2017 next week, or we could kind of just do both today and skip through the whole rigmarole of going through them and kind of get to the nitty gritty bits of both games and what they brought to the table and kind of this whole history of Prey as it stands. It's a very unique title. And it was as I was doing my research and looking through it again today, I realized, yeah, this could make just one big chunk and it's be summarized. And if we want to return to it, we could and do a little bit more in depth. But the full story from 1995, on the development of early 3D FPS games, all the way through to last year was kind of still the last big news for the title. Do you guys want to do it that way?
That's a good question. For the sake of my preparation, let's not. For the sake of my preparation, let's not. I would rather cover 2016 today, or 2006, excuse me, because I've been like super curious to hear about that game ever since you showed it off to me that one time. What do you think, Alfie?
Yeah, let's do that. If that's what you're more comfortable with. I apart from reading the Wikipedia twice, I don't know anything about Prey 2006.
Where it began was all the way back in 1995. Originally, Prey wasn't really like a game. It was more of a tech demo than anything. It was like the Unreal Tournament to the Unreal Engine. Prey was to the Prey engine that 3D Realms was developing. So it really wasn't even a game. It was just a tech demo that was, at the time, very impressive. And before I get really, really far into this, I got to take all the credit away of research from me and give it to this dude that runs this website called the Prey Museum. It's the Wikipedia page, but like on steroids. It's crazy. They got everything you can need. And so in 1995, you had, you kind of have what was the start of 3D games, 3D first-person shooters on consoles at home, stuff like that was starting to actually kind of be realized. But the technology of what it could accomplish was still very limiting. Think back to those games that you had that now are legendary. Doom, Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, right? You go back and play them now, and it looks like a bunch of boxes stacked over each other with 2D textures, and it's all 2D images. You can tell that by looking at it. Technology wasn't super advanced. Prey was kind of this bleeding edge game and development at the time that was pushing the envelope of like what is conceivable, what is doable, what can be done in a 3D world, in a 3D environment. What does it mean to think three-dimensionally? As strange as it is, Prey was like, everybody looked at this game when it came, or not when it came out, but when it was being like teased, and this was it. Like, this was like, nothing beats Prey. Prey's the best. People were blown away.
It was the Cyberpunk 2077
In
of
a lot of ways,
94.
it kind of was. The hype of it wasn't the same. The execution was like, it was a game on execution. It lived up to what it was trying to accomplish. But I mean, it took a solid decade to get made. The reason was, and we'll go through this, is that it kind of had 3 starting points. It had this area, and then we'll get into a little bit of the middle ground where a lot of the narrative of the game was cemented and developed on. And then you had your final iteration in the 2000s to get it to launch on the Xbox 360 and the PC. So it has this journey, it has a very long journey. We're going through some of those images now. I mean, you can see how old it is, man. Like, this is this is what we're looking at for 1995 computer hardware.
Yeah, wow.
And
Oh my goodness.
since you're listening to it and can't see, we're looking at we're basically looking at a bunch of block polygon images that have no anti-aliasing. It's kind of best way to put
Yeah,
this.
it's a bunch of it's a lot of rooms and a lot of like what we're looking at right now is like a lot of like triangles that look like Christmas trees just pointing up towards the sky, and it's oh dude, it's so old. You forget that like games like this used to exist and just like this was just it, you know.
Right?
This is very God, what's that one game? Grim Fandango looking, you know.
Yeah. Or you could even equate this to like, which came out
It's
a
like,
little bit later. What?
I was gonna say, it reminds me of Legacy of Kain. Just a specific screenshot, and it's got purple walls and very drab. Like, sorry, there's like purple areas. I can't even make out what.
Yeah, it
It's
almost looks
difficult.
like an aura or something. It's weird.
Yeah, there's definitely with these games. There's like a beauty in motion when you actually have the full context, and you're like, okay, I could buy that. That's hell behind
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
But one of the things that you're looking at this, I look at this and I see a lot of Resident Evil. Personally, I see a
Oh
lot of that,
yeah.
like what's going to come out on the PS1 a little bit later. You can start to see that tech here because, again, this is in 1995, and you got to look at what's going on in the image as well. It's a bunch of triangles that look like Christmas trees. There's a lot of purple like hues and auras floating around. But the biggest thing is that there's a lighting engine. There's a lighting engine in this game that is actually working as intended on 3-dimensional objects moving in space. And we
Oh yeah,
can't
there
see
it is.
that.
You can see it, and you can see it at work in the screenshot over on the left hand side. If you divide it into quadrants on the bottom left quadrant towards the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Very light shadows there.
And so that was kind of part of one of the things that this game was boasting, was an engine that could do lighting in a 3-dimensional like environment on the fly, so that you could one of the things they talked about in development, this might be later, I might be crossing interviews. There's so many interviews for this game. I think I'm crossing timelines. But you can start to see newer technology that hasn't been done before. You go back and play those old Doom games, and it's just all brightly lit. There's no depth of field, there's no shadows in that type of sense, unless they're hard baked into the animations. And so this game floated around for a little bit in development. It wasn't until 97 and 98 that the game really kind of was shown off to the world in any sort of real sense. They showed it off at E3 for those 2 years. And it's funny, man, going back and looking at E3 footage from 1998 is a crack up, dude. Here, let me find one of these interviews from 1998. You can see it moving. You can see the game actually like working.
Oh man. I know this is gonna be different, like way different from the final product too.
Oh,
So
very
I think,
different.
oh god, immediately this is different. Immediately this is
Okay.
90s in a nutshell.
So, you can't hear it, listeners, and it's because I'm muted, but you guys can still hear it, yeah? I
Yeah,
think for a short second.
yeah.
Okay. So the guy that we're looking at here, on the left side of the screen is Paul, can't say his last name. We'll just call him Paul. He's the one that picked it up. So as the game was developing through 95, 96, it kind of had a little bit of an outline. It had a little bit of a story. But again, this game was made less for its game and more for its showing off of its engine's capabilities. When this guy came on, the guy on the left with a gnarly perm, it looks like, maybe that's just his hair, but he kind of took it and made it into a lot more of what we're going to know it as. So the ideas of alien abductions and the scenarios that he kind of posited at his time there went into making the game, and we'll see this continued on down the road for what eventually becomes the final release of Prey. So this guy is about to show us off the footage of it. And just take in everything in this picture. Give us a running a play by play for us.
Oh my goodness. So currently they're kind of just discussing all the fun that's happening internally with the game. He's gone ahead and pulled up the game so far. And man, this looks incredible so far. This is not what I was expecting. So it looks like it is a first person shooter. However, he's looking up. He's literally looking around, and that's not something that was, previously done in like games like Doom and, like Wolfenstein. So this is already like super impressive. He's shown an environment being blown off as well, like a building like being blown up. Oh man, okay. This gun he's using is also pretty sick. It's almost like
It's
a
a
grenade
space
launcher that's,
shotgun or
yeah,
something.
that's like spreading out. I was looking for the word there, but spreading out and leaving like a fire trail almost. Man, that's great. This is so crazy so far.
Yeah, so a lot of the technology that they're talking about at the time was like he took this cool shot is like rocket shotgun and was shooting it, and the rocket shotgun itself was like a cutting edge technology because the bullets don't travel in a predicted line or in the same line. The bullets themselves are affected how the rockets would fly off. So every single shot is different based on the different variables of the shot, playing out. That was new in itself. And then he shot down some parts of the environment, and those came crumbling down. And those weren't just set pieces designed for that. It was kind of this showing off of this idea is that the whole world is built up on this, structure that you can manipulate and break down and blow up and into pieces. In 1998, this stuff was being developed.
Man, that is insanely impressive. That is insanely impressive for the
I
time.
remember a Hulk game from like a while back boasting everything's destructible. Like in a Hulk game, you had to have that, you know.
Mhm.
And then of course there was like some section that for some reason you couldn't destroy it. Everybody was harping on it. You can't destroy this building. This building fucking sucks. This game fucking sucks.
They're like,
Well, I mean, that's the caveat for not having, everything in your game being destructible. Kind of face that backlash.
well, and I don't think like really like I don't even think we still have truly completely destructible environments. Maybe Battlefield kind of hit that in their multiplayer stuff. Um and I think there was actually a game that literally like released earlier this week that is kind of built on this that every single piece of the world is destructible and movable. Or what was that roguelite that had the
Ooh.
remember talking about that each pixel was simulated and you could affect it? You bought it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that. I know what you're talking about. I have to look that up real quick, but no, I do know what you're talking about. The game that came to mind for me immediately was Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, where you could literally like slash buildings like in half. You could break the environment as much as you wanted to. You
Hmm.
know, and that was a really cool thing about that game, right? Like if you hated a trash can, you could just cut it, right?
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't just about cutting the trash can though.
Yeah,
That for Rising, it was like in
leaving a
any
message.
conceivable fucking. Let's say that there's a line between the 2 points of my fingertips. Like
Yeah.
you had full control over it. You could choose how, like, which way to slice, and that's where
Mhm.
your cut would be, like to a T. That
Yeah,
was like the big thing about it. And then they had the. I remember the trailer literally. It had him like going up on a table with watermelons and cutting the watermelons different ways. I'm not joking. That was a legit thing Kojima did.
yeah,
Ridiculous.
But I mean,
but very
that's
cool,
this is
very cool.
technology. This is ideas and stuff that is still being developed 20 years later. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
This is the beginning of that technology is in this game that does it's not even owned by 3D Realm. Like it's not even in their control anymore. But it all
Yeah.
started here in 1996 and 1995. Play a little bit more of this.
Okay.
They show off a lot of the stuff that they show off during this is the ability to put more on the screen and do more with the engine and push it to the max while trying to keep it on consumer friendly PCs and hardware. And it's so funny to hear them talk about this stuff in 1998 when they're talking about like, you know, the real hardcore gamers or the real hardcore consumers are going to be the ones that are keeping up with technology, and you know, the people that enjoy this as a hobby are constantly updating, and it's like nothing has changed since
Yeah.
forever. It's always been the same with PCs. It's
Yeah.
just funny to hear them talk about that stuff, and then you see this, you know, and you're like,
Yeah, this like blocky mess of like kind of decent like textures and
here they're showing off that portal
Wow.
technology. So this is in
Wow.
1998. They're using what you would imagine like Portal from Steam, from Valve.
uh-huh.
Same exact type of technology, the same exact type of stuff you would imagine seeing. They're pulling it off here in 1998.
Oh goodness.
And what they're showing is that the you can manipulate the portals in all three dimensions so that it's not like a texture on a wall or you know a gimmick like a picture or something that they're faking it. No, it's a real portal that you can interact with that can be manipulated in all directions.
Man.
They even show the idea of like portals as they would, making two portals and being able to create them at any given point and shoot through them and interact with them like a portal would. I mean,
Mhm.
everything that you can imagine in Portal 2006 or in Portal, yeah, 2008, but the original Portal released by Valve, anything you can imagine in that game is essentially possible with what they were attempting to create in this iteration of the game.
Mhm. It makes me wonder if the developers for Portal ended up looking at like interviews like this and going, when they were making Portal and going, okay, maybe we can, expand on that idea. Maybe not like actually shoot through it, but what if we can like stick portals to walls and then, walk through it,
Mhm.
right? Obviously, they could not have the same functionality of having a portal on a moving surface, right? Um, but it does still intrigue me to see if this was the building block, right, for Portal's influence of sorts.
Well, it absolutely was.
Uh-huh.
But probably not in the manner that probably not in the direct correlation that you imagine in your head. This type of stuff, this portal technology was brand new, literally cutting edge technology. When they talk about it in other interviews, they talk about what they're doing with Prey as being next century technology. Already they're developing for technology that doesn't exist yet. They're
Hmm.
developing for 2001 tech with what they're trying to accomplish here. They are just kind of ahead of the game at this point, waiting for everything to catch up. And that is ultimately where this development of this version of Prey kind of peters out, is in that wait, in that desert of technology. As they developed the game further, as people were very interested in seeing the development of it, it turns out that the technology for portals is hard, man, especially when you don't have anything to base it off of.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they were really like going at it like gung ho, for this game, and I truly like admire them for at least reaching as far as they did for a lot of this stuff. Um, And it did end up making its way into the final product somehow, right? These portals.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing, right? So
Mhm.
Steam and Valve and Portal came out with all this stuff, and you alluded to maybe they went back and were looking at this tech and trying to come up and using it as influence for puzzles and stuff. The reality is all of this technology was common in every single engine after 2004.
Really?
Yeah, while in 1995 and 1998, this stuff was cutting edge, was brand new. It sparked something, and as technology grew really fast, it became very common to have portal technology just in the engine. Whereas before, nothing had been able to do this because it needed the engine to run this specifically. It was a very proprietary thing that
Mhm.
very quickly became much more common and used. So, like, to bring it full circle, they 3D Realms created portal technology, developed it, and it ultimately was the cause to the end of development for Prey because the portal technology was too difficult. It was
Mhm.
harder to make it a real thing. They wanted to have a real portal gun, like Portal. Shoot over there, walk on through. That was a design element. They
Yeah.
wanted that. And they wanted all these different things. But by the time you get to actually realizing them on a 1998 hardware, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it caused the game to stop development. And it floated out in the ether for a while.
Man, man, that is actually insane. I did not know that part about the 2004 with portal technology. That's crazy.
All I know is that at some point that it became so common that, as it floated in the ether, got worked on here and there. And then a little bit later in 2000s, it got locked down again and started development. When that happened, 3D Realms said, well, let's just license an engine and use it to develop the game.
Hmm.
So the studio that made Portal technology, that realized its existence into video games and how it could work, and the game that originally housed the original iterations of Portals, eventually licensed the technology to build their game from id Software,
Oh,
and they were using a version of id Tech to make their game.
man. Okay. Okay. They just moved around all the companies then. That's
Kind of. And this is kind of why I wanted to, it kind of works to just talk about all the versions of the game at once,
uh,
because they licensed their engine from id and used it to develop Prey. Prey comes out, it's well received. It did really well, actually. It was announced to have a sequel on the way. Sequel started development. It got an iOS game, old school iOS games, not like new ones, but like, remember like Flip Deck or whatever finger deck, it was like a
yeah.
skateboarding game. There was like
Hmm.
old iOS games. There was a
Hmm.
Prey old iOS game,
Jeez.
well received. And then in 2009, I believe it was, 3D Realms was acquired by ZeniMax. And ZeniMax, as we all know, is the owners of Bethesda Studios and anything under that web,
Hmm.
which includes id Software. So the studio that made Portal technology eventually went so far down the line development that they just licensed somebody else's technology with their own portals in it to make their game. That the company they licensed from was id Tech. They sold their company, or they sold their IPs to the company that owns id Tech.
That
It's a
is
little
a
that's a little
lot.
confusing,
A little
but
That's a
confusing.
lot.
Let me take
That's
it
a
a step
lot.
further. ZeniMax then gave the studio that was working on a new space game already separate, Arcane Studios, gave them the ability to take the title. So they were like sitting in a boardroom trying to come up with a title for their game, and they were like, "Want to use Prey?" I'm like, it's a pretty fucking good name. And they're like, "Take it." And they're like, "Okay." And so they took it, And that is literally how Prey got its name. They took some things here and there. They developed bits and pieces of the new Prey to kind of reflect and pay homage to the old Prey. But it's a completely different ballgame. Like the new Prey in 2017 is a different IP, a different
like
game.
Not made with the original in mind at all.
At all. It is a completely different game. Like to its truest form. Completely a reimagining. And they're both... I was about to say they're both good games. I played the original Prey 2006. It's an okay game. And when you look at the rest of 3D Realm's like library of games, it's definitely not at the top of their list in terms of their titles. But it is this like necessary stepping stone. And I think that the Prey 2017 is a much better title. Like a much better game in totality. But again, it's a very different game. And I want to talk about that one. I have so much to talk about that one. I love that game. But that's not what we're going to talk about. We're gonna turn it back, and we're going to talk about the first half of all of this and talk about Prey 2006 a little bit more, and get into a little bit of the story. So we've gone through the development of it. I don't want to go through it like Professor Layton. It's not as complex or needing as Professor Layton. But I'll touch on it a little bit because it is kind of an interesting concept in the oversaturated genre of alien everything, right? Because I feel like Aliens is kind of encompasses this place as zombies now, where you have to do something really interesting with zombies to make it, to hold interest. You can't just do your standard zombie story anymore. It's got to
have some twists and turns.
Yeah, it's got to have some nuance to it that nobody else has tackled yet. And so with Aliens, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you can only go through so many, like, the aliens come and attack and we fight them off kind of stories.
Yeah.
So that's why Prey 2006 is kind of a really cool breath of fresh air when it comes to the alien abduction story. All right, so let's get into the story of Prey, and I'm going to keep it shorter than Layton because I listened to the Layton episode and I hated listening to it. So we're going to keep it a little bit shorter and kind of hit more upon the bigger narrative points of the whole thing. Let's start out from the beginning because the intro to it is important to get us into everything. And it opens up with the game opens up with Tommy, who we end up playing as throughout the entire game, who is Cherokee Native American. And he looks up into the mirror, and that's how we begin the game, is looking at our reflection, looking at technology of showing reflection in a mirror. But that's how we start the game. We look into the mirror of a bar, and Tommy says to himself something along the lines of getting out of there, getting out of the nation, getting out of the reservation, getting off of the reservation, starting life somewhere new. He wants to leave the Cherokee behind, but he can't do it without his girlfriend Jen, who is running the bar. So we exit out of the bathroom, go into the main bar. We meet our grandfather and Nissy, and that's kind of the main cast that we need to worry about for now. There's a couple of dudes at the bar that catcall Jen, and like any boyfriend would do, we pick up a freaking pipe wrench and beat them within an inch of their life.
Yeah, why is a pipe wrench just sitting at a bar?
Oh, because Jen gave it to us because we left it there last time.
Oh, well, that was nice of her. That was nice of her.
That's the explanation. We left.
Convenient and nice.
I think she says, leaving your greasy tools all over my bar, Tommy.
Yeah, that's not an innuendo or anything, no.
And then we take our
It's not an
greasy
innuendo at all.
wrench and
Leaving
beat
your
some
greasy
dudes.
tools.
But we end up...
Beat some greasy dudes.
We do.
All
We beat them within an inch of their life. They're lying on the floor, and Jen's like, "What, Tommy? What are you doing, Tommy?" I don't know why Cherokees sound like that, but she gets mad at us, and we're like, like,
this is the way. This is the way.
But we're like, "What are you talking about? Like, isn't that what men do?" Don't we? I'm protecting you, Jen. And before she can really protest, a car parked in the back of the bar gets picked up by a beam of green light that shoots down out of the sky. And it, the car alarm goes off, and you hear it kind of float over the building and then come crashing into the bar in the back where you had just come from the bathrooms and such. And before you can even really kind of get an understanding of what's going on, the radio turns on in the corner and starts playing Don't Fear the Reaper as the green light beams down on you from above, tearing off the roof, and you get beamed up into the spaceship proper. And that's how the game begins.
I mean, one hell of a start to a game, I'll tell you that much.
It's a pretty good it's a very memorable one.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know another game where you pick up your greasy wrench from your girlfriend, beat some greasy dudes, and then get picked up in a greasy spaceship.
I mean,
Grief.
I bet you I could find 2 of them on Steam right now.
Oh, I'm gonna have to hold you to that. I'm gonna have to hold you to that one.
You might not like what you find.
It's Steam. I'm not gonna like anything I find, but go on.
Oh, going the opposite. Normally it's Epic Games that can't do anything good, but Steam, I've hated them since the beginning.
Yeah, they're the worst, man. No. So where do
s-
we take off after that?
well, we get beamed up into the ship,
Uh-huh.
and it's at this point like there's a lot of themes in the very beginning that they try and hit upon to carry out. Like Tommy, first thing he says is, "I got to get off the reservation. I got to get out of here." He gets his wish granted. He's off the reservation now, Tommy.
Say that like he got voted out. You're out of the reservation, Tommy. But it was just one guy and one wrench. Out. Which
I mean, essentially, this is what it is. If you want to bare bones of this, yeah.
See, it's actually an allegory. The aliens are Americans, and we're coming.
I see you.
No, so there's that. Like, there's already that kind of storytelling. Tommy wants to leave. Here's your wish, Tommy. You're leaving. You're going to outer space. But there's also there's minor things there that were in development of the original game that you see now within an engine that can do it, just like all the other engines. So it's not necessarily interesting, but it is still like the fruition of what they worked on coming, to the end of things, or what they worked on coming to fruition.
Right.
Like when the beam shoots down and picks us up into the spaceship, it tears apart the roof of the bar. And that's kind of harkening back to that technology I showed you guys before the break of the destructible environments and stuff like that. We're seeing it here. It's just in an engine that could already do it. It's not the bleeding edge anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there it is.
Yeah.
Now,
Still there.
Where we go, I've told Scott's seen this. Where we go is not a very fun place.
Putting that lightly.
To put off what we would learn way later in the story and just make sense now. We didn't go to a spaceship, not in the sense that we're used to thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
We instead were taken aboard what is a giant mass in space called the sphere. And it is essentially a living Dyson sphere, whereas the structure around it is both organic and spacecraft. And the sun, to the Dyson sphere analogy, our sun in this equation is a living circular mass.
Mm-hmm. You told me. I just remembered it.
So I think this concept alone is really interesting because I've never heard of something like this before in any piece of media, but a actual spherical thing that orbits around a central living mass, and it's like working around it to keep that mass alive and going, but also siphoning its energy.
Oh, that's an interesting place to go, man. That's not like so the first thing I picture when the typical alien abduction story, obviously you go to the spaceship and they go, "Ah, we want your brains, right?" Or they dissect you, right?
I thought it was the probing.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
It's following the general lines. But like this is taking a whole different direction, right? And
Right?
I've seen some of it when you played it. This is taking a whole different
Whole
direction.
different direction.
Whole different direction. And I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it.
So now that we know that the thing that we're aboard is called the sphere, the
Uh-huh.
question becomes is why we're aboard it, or why did we get abducted? What is their purpose? And like you just said, a lot of the reasons could be involved with like, I want your brains, or I want, to probe you and learn from you, or something like that, send you
Mhm.
back, whatever. Take your embryos and eggs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
This version does none of that. And instead, we find ourselves aboard this ship, aboard the sphere, and we become Monsters Inc. doors attached to these swinging like slabs that are going through the ship.
Right,
And
right.
as we swing through them, I mean, imagine the Monsters Inc. doors and how they swing around. Now, just imagine a dude can hold on to the door. That's what we are. We're being swung around this facility just like that. And next to us is Jen and our grandfather, Anisi, all of us abducted. And we're swinging through this facility. And as you swing through, you come across and you see these like vistas, or essentially like, these landscapes that are just lines and lines and lines of these frames that ostensibly have more people aboard, and he
Mhm.
just goes on and on, and you can just see it keep going and going. But the game has to begin at some point,
Of course.
and as good a place as any is while we're swinging along these door frames. And it's not us that gains control. We actually, as we're swinging through, we see what we kind of now know to be a rebel group, and this is the first time we see them. It's one dude, and he places a bomb on a pillar that's holding up this room that we're in. And when it goes off, the explosion reaches us in the room as well, knocking us free and giving us mobility to wander around the ship.
Mhm.
First thing we got to see, not 2 steps later, we walk down a corridor and we see some dude come sliding in on that slab, go slide in, and then a thing comes sticking out of the wall, and then just go and just stab him a bunch of times right in front of
Oh
us.
God.
And that's exactly what Tommy says. And so then
Oh
we
man.
walk around this, like do this little U-turn and walk around the edge to the other side, and the
Mhm.
body gets lifted up and goes away.
Wow. Yeah, way to really immerse your players into an environment. Nothing better than bodies getting stabbed repeatedly to really get you going on a new game.
And he flies off. We round a corner, that guy flies off. Comes
Uh-huh.
sliding in on the next slab is our grandfather. And we got nowhere else to go. We can't
So,
go
so
any
then,
further. We gotta sit there as we watch the thing coming in from out of scene, and then just stab our grandfather, killing him in front of us.
damn, dude. So this is the about to get your head chopped off moment from Skyrim,
Yeah.
Except for we're already free.
like the mercy. Oh, you can be moving around. You just
Yeah, we're free at this point. We're moving around. We
Are
we
we
have
are we truly free if we're watching our if we have to watch our
no. We're
grandfather?
stuck on a walkway. Um, and now that rebel dude that initially knocked us free activates one of the terminals, which brings up a portal that we can walk through to the end of the level, and then the next level begins on the other side. And we're chasing after. So after our grandfather gets killed, we look up, and here comes Jen, our girlfriend, comes swinging by on the slab and goes flying further into the ship. And our goal now is to just chase after her and save her. And that is legitimately the main drive of Tommy for the rest of the game. That is the main motivation factor. That's what the game's about. Is saving Jen now that you are free.
So it's consistently just saving Jen, not like, oh,
Consistently.
Jen gets...
Your character, Tommy, is very much nose down saving Jen.
Wow, that's respectable. That kudos to him. Really knows what he wants. Really knows what he wants to do. Kudos to him.
So I'm pulling up on my on the stream that I'm showing you guys now, pulling up some of the images from the game, and this is from release, or this is from a year before release, but this is after playing the game. This is basically what the game looks like. These are like your grunt type enemies that you're seeing. The gun that he has is a shotgun, like poisonous gun type of thing. I'm trying to get a good image of like the scenery, because the scenery is really weird. Here's one of the guns, and you can see a lot of the design elements of the game was kind of, it feels a lot like what Dead Space would kind of go on and start to do a lot more of, which is kind of that like this weird organic growth over very metal and human creations. So the inside of this ship, of the sphere, it's not just all alien, gross, like organy, fleshy stuff, and it's not just all human, hard angle, metal, shiny, cold bits. It's this really grotesque kind of culmination of both of those into something that's really unique and that I haven't seen before. It's not a really good image of it. Yeah, that's kind of a good example of it.
Oh yeah. So this screenshot here, and if I were to describe this, it reminds me of a Halo area where like you're on the cliffside with like rocks, right? On
Yeah.
like a
Except
like a
for those aren't
bridge.
rocks.
Greasy wrench.
Yeah, that's Flash, right?
It's a very greasy looking wrench it got there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's the greasiest wrench I've seen in a while.
Is that a tooth on it from that guy?
Yeah.
No, I see this and I see Skyrim, which, and I
Really?
mean that as a compliment to this game and like a diss to Skyrim for looking like poo poo for like the time that it was released.
Yeah.
Because this game for 2006 actually looks really good. Like when you first showed me the first screenshot, I was like, wait, did we move on to Prey 2016? The one of the alien? But because we jumped from that first one where
Yeah.
showing off the lighting engine in the corner there. If you take a look, it's funny though. The models. Was this game released for this game? This game came out for 360.
Yeah,
360. Wow.
It's very interesting now that I've said it to think that this game and Skyrim actually are on the same platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 5 years.
That's a mind blown, though. That's like, wow.
So this image that I'm showing you guys now, this is our grandfather, Nissi. And the area we're in, you wouldn't recognize as the ship. And that's because shortly after we see our grandfather get killed in front of our eyes and Jen fly off and we have to chase after them, it's like right after that, as we load into the next level, we go around the corner and we're presented with this very precarious bridge that we need to cross. And it's being held up by almost like a crane, like in one spot or like in two spots on either side. And as we start to cross it, enemies come out and shoot the things holding up the bridge. And we go falling into this pit below us, into the darkness. The game should be over. We died. We fade out. We're in a coma. But it's not. Instead, we wake up here in what looks like a southwestern United States, kind of arid desert looking place. And we walk around the corner and we come across a campfire, and our spirit grandfather, the spirit of our grandfather Anisi, comes out and speaks to us and tells us that our Cherokee heritage has given us a power that others don't have, and that it is not our time to die, but instead it is our time to become the warrior of the Cherokee and to take up that mantle. And so we follow a little bit further in, and we get a cool bow and arrow, and we get the ability to go into the astral plane and project ourselves spiritually out into the world, leaving our physical body behind.
Not a thing I was expecting to happen, though I probably should have, considering it is a very Indian type character, right? Obviously,
That's a naive American, all right?
Native American. Native American. But my point still stands of like I should be expecting this, right, with this type of character, right, being written. And yet I'm not. I'm not expecting like, oh, you now have this astral bow that you can now, shoot people with, I hope. I hope. What is
It's
this?
not, and it's not a very good weapon. It's not like something you'll go into and feel like you went Super Saiyan and we're like,
Mhm.
just taking people. No, it's not a very good weapon at all. You get much better weapons later in the game. And this is kind of where this game, playing it now, feels like a very, very advanced tech demo. It
Mhm.
feels like they took a really cool tech demo and made it into a game, not making a game out of the cool technology that they have. Because it's like this. It's like this power where now you can go into the spirit world. What type of opportunities and gameplay elements does this provide you?
Mhm.
You think that the possibilities are endless, but in execution, it ends up being go into your spirit form so you can go past this doorway that you can't in your
Ah,
regular form and hit this button so that it activates the walkway for you to go further. That's what the puzzles are in this game. That's what those end up being. Is just hit the button, unlock the path, walk over the path.
interesting. Interesting. I'm really the Cherokee warrior now. Can't wait to open that bridge. Can't really wait to open that bridge with my warrior status. To
And
be feared.
I wish that the Native American side of things came into it a little bit more. It doesn't really. It provides this kind of cool like thing to do, which is the spirit form. It explains how you die, like the death sequences in the game, which we'll get into in just a hot second. But the game really just doesn't go any further. It introduces the ability, like it changes gravity. So one of the cool things in the original like base tech demos of the game was that you could adjust gravity so that it wasn't just pulling down. You can make it so that as you walked along a wall, it would pull you in the direction so that if you were standing on the ceiling and someone was standing below you, if you were on that surface, it would look right side up to you. So shifting gravity was a really big part of like the development and what the engine could do back in the day. And when it gets kind of made into gameplay elements for the final release, it is super simple stuff like walk on the ceiling over there. Like activate, oh, the walkway's not activated. Let me turn into my astral form, walk through this doorway, activate it, go back into my regular form, and now I can navigate it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Very,
Wow.
very basic stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
But I said I was going to talk about what happens when you die. This is an interesting concept as well. I think worked on paper doesn't quite work the same way in execution, but still an interesting concept. There's no lives, there's no game over, and you cannot die essentially in the game.
Oh.
Um,
So what, he's immortal?
Essentially, if his life bar or if his health drops to zero, instead of dying outright, he goes into this spirit realm where it becomes almost like a little mini game where these flying bat creatures will fly past you and they're either red or blue. And if you shoot the red ones, you get health back. If you shoot the blue ones, you get essence back for your astral form. But regardless, you're going to get health back. So there's no dying in the game.
Okay.
Which both makes it fun because you can't die and you're always engaged, but also kind of makes everything trivial because it's like, I don't need to sit here and try my ass off to beat this boss, because if I die, I'll just come back and can just keep wailing on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked in theory, which was the thought. The theory was never have downtime, always be playing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I gotta let my cat in.
But the execution ended up just being a system that trivialized your gameplay, in real time. It trivialized the challenge that the game presented to the player.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Now,
Interesting.
they do some more cool stuff with the game. If you want to get into that, we can maybe go into a little bit more in a different podcast for a different show. But there's a lot more elements and a lot smaller stuff that the game adds. It's kind of fun. There's some really cool elements with portals and shifting sizes and stuff. Like there's a portion of the game where you go through a portal and it takes you onto this little tiny ball that's displayed in the display case before you go through the portal that puts you on it, so you can see it in the display case. And then you jump through a portal and then you're on that tiny little thing that's displayed, and an enemy comes running up to it in the room, and he's huge and he looks at you, and then he jumps through the portal and then comes to fight you on that little thing that's being displayed. Cool stuff like that. But if you wanted to play the game, or if you want to check out the game anymore, you can still pick it up on the Microsoft the Microsoft Game Store on Xbox One. I think you can get it on Xbox One, because if you have the original disc for the Xbox 360, you can slap that thing into your Xbox and download like the 4 gigabyte patch and play the game. You can download it. You cannot play it on its original home on the PC unless you have an original copy that's physical. There are no digital sales for the game on PC whatsoever. It is what's colloquially known as a piece of abandonware, where the title just wasn't continued to be updated and to be sold. And so it just kind of, like Alan Wake kind of went through a similar thing. Scott Pilgrim went through a similar thing where it didn't get updated and didn't get carried, and so it just drops away and gets abandoned. That's what happened to Prey 06. Just kind of dropped away and got abandoned at some point before the selling in 2009, 2008. So if you wanted to play that now on PC, you have to pirate it. Not that I'm saying that you should. It's the only way you can.
Basically, we're forcing you to.
Hey, we're not.
Scott, put the gun down. Scott.
No.
But for story-wise, it plays very, very much like you would expect from a game where your main goal is to go save your girlfriend. Every step of the way that you get, your girlfriend's dangled in front of you a little bit more, and it forces you to keep going and keep going as the bait keeps getting pulled further and further in. Eventually, you do end up meeting the rebel forces.
So I'm thinking about this now, right? While you're looking at this up, this is basically a different take on the Mario Save the Princess type formula.
Yeah, very much. There are very much elements of that throughout
Yeah.
the game. Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's not what I was expecting when we were like talking about this game, because the game, what you had shown me previously, it did look fun, right? And I thought there was more to it, like most games now would have like, oh, you saved your girlfriend, but now you got to take down whoever, right? Or like in games like BioShock, right, where you have to go, fuck, I forget his name, like Andrew, was it like the main villain? Spoilers, by the way, for a very old game,
But
but
Glass, wasn't it? Something Glass.
yeah,
Anyways.
but you basically take down the main villain, right?
Mhm.
After trying to figure out like how you got there, etc. Right? I wasn't expecting a direct like, "Oh, go save the princess. She's in another part of the castle.
Yeah, that's
Good luck."
Tommy's main goal. And and remember I said that's Tommy's main motivation. As he continues through, he does meet the rebels, and he meets their leader called Iluit. She looks like a shaman from like a shaman like character from D&D, of like a cult that worships like a sun god. She has like this big headdress and crazy things on it. She wears like a very skimpy garb. And she looks nothing like all the other people that she leads. She's very kind of made to look different. And she tells us are also people who have been captured by the aliens, but they've escaped, and that they have been collecting technology from around the ship to develop a machine with a portal back to Gaia, their home. And that last piece, that final thing that they need, is only in a place that Tommy can get to. And that
Oh,
place happens to also be on the way to where Jen, our girlfriend, is being held. So Tommy is very simple. It's like, well, I'm not getting out of here. I'm not going through the portal unless I got Jen.
hmm
So we're still gonna help him, but we gotta get Jen first.
right. So they're just dangling you a little more with, "We'll help you get out, but," right?
Exactly.
Like,
And so we go save Jen. Very easy. You just go
okay.
to a lab, and there she is. She's inside a thing. You push a button, and like Mr. House, she comes out, and Jen's alive. And she tells
Oh.
us something we already know, but I haven't told you guys, which is the reason that we were being abducted by the aliens, is we were brought aboard the sphere, and we're being killed in these terrible stabbing and mangling ways. And the whole reason is that humans are the food for the thing in the sphere.
Oh.
Way back when humans were placed on this earth, we weren't placed here as an experiment. We weren't placed here as to watch grow. We were placed as cattle to populate what is a cosmic ranch with a space as our gates to stop us.
Mhm.
We were put on this planet to populate, overpopulate, and now they are here for the culling. And we are just being processed in the sphere.
Well, damn, dude.
So, do we know if we know that there's like a resistance, but do we know if we're the only like group of people that they just up and swooped?
Well, they're abducting people all over. This is actually kind of one of the cooler things that the game does to kind of build that picture that there's a lot of stuff happening, not just in the Cherokee reservation, but also
Mhm.
around the world. Way back in the day, there was a show on nationwide late at night called Coast to Coast AM, and it was hosted by a guy named Art Bell. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you haven't heard the show and you don't know who Art Bell is, it is worth the look up, because it is very synonymous with people in the paranormal worlds, in the weird and kind of wacky stuff. Everyone knows who Art Bell is. And this very famous radio program that ran nightly became famous for talking about those kind of off the reservation type of ideas, like aliens and cryptids and ghosts and everything. Run the gamut. He talked about it. That was what made the show.
Mhm.
But probably the most common and most infamous thing that he talked about were aliens. And so there are multiple times throughout this game when walking through the ship, you'll find intercoms that are still on, that are intercepting radio signals from Earth, playing Art Bell Coast to Coast episodes.
Oh, that's
Except for those
interesting.
episodes are custom made recordings of him and fake interviewers for the events of Prey.
That's really sick. That's really sick. I like that. I really like that. That's a nice touch.
And you could easily just miss it because it's just playing on the intercom. You can just walk right past it. I enjoy all that paranormal stuff. So when I heard Art Bell, I was like, radar went up, like, whoa. That was one of the really cool things.
Yeah, whoa, you can't put in this cool feature for me. That's illegal.
But to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot more it's going on across the world. It's not just happening in the isolated spot. There's
Mhm.
events happening all around the world.
Okay. Okay. So is it just humans or is it other like
No.
aliens?
No, we learn later it's not just humans. There
Oh.
in fact, so we learn about this alien called the Keeper. And around the same time that we learn about them, we start hearing things in our head. And this is before we meet Iloit. This is before we meet the rebels. And so throughout the game, we hear this voice in our head talk to us, taunt us, kind of knowing where Jen is, knowing about where the ship and everything that we're going. It's talking to us. And we grow to believe it to be this thing called the Keeper. And this is what Iloit and the rebels tell us about, is that there's an alien called the Keeper that keeps the technology from them and is able to control the portals, opening them to where they need to go, stuff like that. So we think for the longest time that our main antagonist, like the big bad boss that we're trying to aim for and beat, is called the Keeper. But it's
Okay.
revealed after we beat the Keeper and open up a portal only for it to get destroyed and blah, 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 more plot stuff for us to have to keep going. But we beat the Keeper and it's revealed the Keeper's just an alien. And there's a whole species of Keepers. And then he becomes a standard enemy that you now have to fight.
Oh,
Wow.
what?
That's actually a really cool psycho.
That is a really cool way to introduce an enemy. It's a
But we
really
still
sick
hear the
ride.
voice.
Oh.
So we now know that, we know as a player, or at least I kind of knew, it was like, well, that's not the Keeper. Tommy's just a dumbass and still calls it the Keeper. And so even after we've killed the Keeper and revealed there's a lot more Keepers, the voice keeps talking to us, and it's a woman's voice. It's like, oh, Tommy, you can't do that, Tommy. And he's like, Keeper! Gah! Like, that's... I could have done the voices for Tommy. He yells that. Whenever you see the Keeper in the scene, he always goes, Keeper! And then that's runs away. That's all he has to
Wow,
say.
that's impressive dialogue on Tommy's end. It
It's
sounds
like
like he's really sharp.
it's the dialogue equivalent of like a pointer dog. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. Like squirrel.
yeah, it just he Keeper, and then and then the Keeper disappears, and we have to keep going. We are introduced to a couple more grotesque aliens. Some of them are like humanoid looking, but look like maybe they were experiments of humans and stuff like that, crossing kind of grotesque stuff that leans more into like Doom or Left 4 Dead material than it does anything else that the game has set up prior.
Right.
But again, we're Tommy, and the only thing we care about is Jen. And now that the portal is broken and we don't know where Iloit and stuff is. Oh, I didn't explain this. This is kind of coming out of nowhere. We find Jen. We go and find Jen.
Mhm.
We save her. We get her out of her confinement. And then there's a broadcast on the screen in the room. It's of Iloit, and they're in the middle of a gunfight because they have been found by the Keeper. And so
Oh.
we hop in a portal and go back to where Iloit was, only to find her incapacitated, bloody, and almost dying. And Jen stays with her, and we run off into the ship chasing after all the people and the aliens that have caused all the damage. And that's where we kill the Keeper. But we lose Jen and Iloit.
Okay.
So now Jen is
Okay.
again lost. We're still hearing the voice in our head, and Iloit and the rebels are out of the picture now. So all we really care about is getting to Jen. And this voice in our head keeps, again, dangling it in front of us and pulling it back, dangling it in front of us and pulling it back, until we finally do reach Jen. We do reach the area that she's in, and she's just so happens to be at the opposite end of what is a big open area that would be perfect for a gunfight.
A la Mass Effect.
And
Very
we have
good.
a gunfight.
Oh, fun. Oh, fun. Time
See,
to whip out the wrench.
See, we get out to we open up the chamber that she's in, and as we do, what we see on the inside is that Jen torso is great and she's normal, but she can't feel her legs. And that's because everything from the waist down has been connected to a reptilian alien creature, and it now attacks us. And we are forced to now fight our girlfriend. We've been going through the whole
Oh.
game chasing after her.
Man, oh man.
Woohoo.
What a turn. What a turn, man. What a turn.
And I'd be lying if I said it was a tough fight. It's not. Jen's not too strong. And when we got to do it,
Oh, fight IQ.
we got to
My
do it,
girlfriend's weak. She's stupid. She's dumb. And she's.
well, we have to do what, is expected of us. And we defeat the alien. And then, we have to kill Jen. Now it's just, what do we got to go on? We got our girlfriend's dead. We have no way off the ship. This voice is taunting and laughing at us, telling us that we're the chosen one. We're the one. Mm-hmm. And now, so after the voice has taken us through all of this, she tells us, this voice tries to tell us that everything we've just gone through has been a trial. It has been a test to see if we're fortified enough to be the special one. And we don't know what that is. And she tells us, this voice in our head tells us, come to the top of the ship, Tommy, and face me. And so we do, kind of with this motivated by anger and rage. We storm our way up like Doom Guy and reach the final scene where it looks like, a good way to put this, you would understand this, Scott. It looks like Futaba sitting in a sphere, like not Futaba herself, but the image of her in her, like, her costume.
Oh, right.
Kind of floating in this sphere that rotates around her. And what we learn is that the sphere itself, the machine the sphere is, I may be getting this wrong, correct me if I am, guys, but the sphere, this machine that circles this living organism mass, is the sphere itself is controlled by a singular entity. And that entity, whatever it was originally or before the one we see before us, chose this woman many generations ago to serve as the replacement. And this woman has reached the end of her life cycle and has chosen Tommy to replace her. So Tommy is now destined to be the one to control the sphere.
Huh.
And so Tommy destroys the sphere or what?
Damn right. Tommy goes, fuck that shit. And he starts shooting at her. We start shooting at her. We start trying to shoot everything. Like, dude, we got nothing left to live for. Yeah, we're going to shoot her.
Yeah,
and it's in this fight that we're tricked. And it's by defeating her, we replace her.
Oh.
And so now we are taken up, we are absorbed up into the ball that she was just in. And we are now controlling the ship. And at this point, we lose all control. The game is over, for us. There's no more gameplay. What plays out to the end of this, to the end title, is Tommy gains control of the sphere, and then he pilots it, like we've piloted other things in the game. I skipped over those, but you get to pilot some ship, some spacecraft. It looks the same. Tommy grabs control of the sphere and turns it towards the sun. And like Superman on his dying days, flies himself and the sphere into the sun. And
a la Iron Giant.
Jeez,
yep. And the screen goes white, and we find ourselves back in the spirit world with our grandfather Anisi. And at this time, Jen comes out as well in the spirit form, and Tommy learns that it is not yet his time to die, and he is then teleported back to Earth or something, and we find ourselves in the bar, but the bar is in a city and not on the reservation, and we're like working on repairing it. It's a very weird time skip. And then Anisi, like a portal opens in the bar, and Anisi comes out of it, or not Anisi, Iluit, the rebel leader, comes walking out of the portal, and Tommy's like, I thought you guys were dead. I thought I saw you guys die. And she's like, You thought we died. The portal broke, but not before we got through. And he's like, cool. What do you want? And they're like, everyone is talking about you, Tommy. Everyone knows of your accolades. He's like, what are you talking about? Nobody knows what I did here. And she's like, nobody knows what you did here, Tommy, but everybody knows what you did out there. And then the screen fades to black. And then this is the best part. Instead of saying like to be continued, because at this point in time, the second game's already in production. Upon release of the first game, the second game has already started production.
Okay.
So instead of saying to be continued on the obvious cliffhanger, it does the much more concrete thing where it says, Prey will continue. And then it got sold to ZeniMax, and then it sat around for a little while, and then the IP got attached to something else that's Alien. So in a weird way, it did continue. But
I mean, they weren't wrong. Yeah.
It's just a funny ending. Prey will continue.
Technically the truth.
Yeah, there's a part in it as well where, because he's connected to this part, truthfully, I did not understand. I thought this part was really ham-fisted into it. It's why I skipped it, because it just doesn't make sense to me. But I'm going to bring it up because I'd be remiss if I didn't. There is a portion of the story where the person who controls the sphere, the voice in our head, is able to physically teleport into the spirit world. So like when we die those couple times and we go meet our spirit grandfather, and then at the end of the game we meet our spirit, spirit girlfriend and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a part of the game where we go into it and he tells us, this is like towards the very end of the game. And we go into the spirit world and we're like, grandfather, I'm not ready. How am I going to be able to beat this big guy? I'm not ready. And he goes, you will learn, son. You will learn, Domasi. You will learn after the 7 trials. And I'm thinking, bro, I know we are in like the back half of the second act, maybe the third act at this point. There's no way you're throwing 7 trials at me at this point in the game.
Yeah.
And so you walk around the corner, you pick up like a smoking pipe, like a ritual pipe or whatever they're called. You pick one of those things up, and like instead of going through those 7 trials, you hear your grandfather pick up the telephone line again in the spirit world and go like, "Hey, Domasi, we're being invaded by aliens. Come help us." I'm not kidding. We run back out to the bonfire area, and our grandfather's doing like some crazy like anime force field something, like Skyrim, like, warding off a spell, throwing up a magic shield, and he's blocking aliens that have teleported into the spirit world and are now attacking the spirit realm.
What?
That's what I said. It doesn't make sense. It is so just like ham-fisted into the story that I don't know why they did it. I don't know why they added this portion to it. Like, it doesn't need to be there. It's like just there to inflate the time of the game. That's why I didn't bring it up in the main part of it. It's just like, you don't even need it. You don't even need it to make sense of what happened and what's going on with the story.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. But that's Prey. That's Prey 2006 for you.
What a weird game.
Yeah. The only thing that would be left is to cover the reception of it, but we kind of covered that earlier. It received really good reviews. Like I said, it had a second game that was already being developed. It had a iOS game that was really well received back, as well as an iOS game can be. And that was at a time before mobile games looked the way they do. It was more like a real FPS game on your phone than it was a mobile game as you would think about them nowadays.
Right.
But yeah, the second game never got developed, got sold to ZeniMax in 2009. ZeniMax gave the IP over to Arcane Studios, and we'll be talking about Prey 2017 next week. So if you're interested in that game, tune in to the podcast, and we'll be talking about that game coming up on the next episode. I have a lot to talk about with that game. we're not going to cover the story. Story is not going to be covered in the same way, but a lot of the narrative elements and a lot of the stuff that I love about storytelling, we'll talk about a lot on that episode. But yeah, that'll be next week. But after getting sold to ZeniMax, they did their own thing with the game, and I guess though really there was one piece of Prey information from last year, if you could consider it Prey, but last year in 2020, if we remember, ZeniMax, Bethesda, and everything else that's under that name was sold and is now owned by Microsoft.
Ooh, that's right. That's right.
So Prey 2017 was a hot enough ticket that it'll receive something for sure. A sequel or something. It's really good. I'm looking forward to next week. But what do you guys think of Prey 2006 as we wrap things up?
Man, that
It
was
was like a worthwhile experience.
Yeah, that was different than what I thought it would be. But
It's crazy that it's so recent, and yet it had an episode. It's underwent an episode of lost media already. Like its PC port is just commercially unavailable now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny. You think of lost media, and you think fucking Mickey Mouse creepypastas and shit that's old, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the only one that like in lost media that comes to mind was Scott Pilgrim before they remastered it. But yeah, no, it's also crazy to realize that game and Skyrim were on the same platform. I'm like, still
Yeah,
like
that's
not
true.
over that. I'm still not over that. I'm like, really?
The 360 came out what, 2004, 2005, 2004? I want to say, because the PS3 came out in 2005.
Later than that, I want to say a little later than that.
2005.
Yeah, 2005.
That was for the
to me
Xbox
that strikes me as a Xbox, like an original Xbox game. You know, that strikes me as an original Xbox game.
Well, and that's why like playing it, you know, you made that comparison to Skyrim, but the thing is as soon as you start playing Skyrim, you realize Skyrim is so much more of a game. There's so much more meat to Skyrim than there is to Prey.
For example, like Prey probably plays more like a hallway kind of a game. I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it being too open.
No,
Skyrim, you get the whole world as soon as you leave the cave. You're right.
You know what came after this and was like the final straw for 3D Realms?
Oh, jeez.
Well, 3D Realms, I'll give you a hint. It was earlier in the podcast I said, but 3D Realms is responsible for Duke Nukem and Duke Nukem 3D and those
Duke Nukem Forever.
Yeah.
That game
that's a nail. That's a nail in the coffin right there.
So when you look at like Duke Nukem Forever came after this game, and then you view this game, and you see a lot of like not similarities, but you can see a lot of the shortcomings of an FPS that we're starting to get used to at this point. This game came out on the same system as Skyrim, and Skyrim is arguably one of the most fulfilling FPS games ever made.
Mm-hmm.
This game doesn't compete with Skyrim when you start getting into it. But because look at also Portal came out in the same generation, but the Portal puzzles, like the puzzles that Portal created for you to deal with, were so much better, so much more complex, and so much more from the mindset of actually thinking with the problems, you know, thinking of problems with the mechanics that they have, not thinking of the most straightforward thing. I guess another thing to point out about this game that is important to the development of it, and I guess at the end of the day, the way the levels and puzzles end up being, is that they wanted this game to be a really hot ticket multiplayer game. And they developed it with the multiplayer side of things in mind. And they wanted it to play akin to like Quake or Unreal Tournament, those types of games. They wanted it to be on that level. And so a lot of their like designs, like the gravity stuff, right? Being able to walk up a wall and on the ceiling on designated paths that were lit up. That was an idea that they brought into the multiplayer. And so they made an entire map where it was only with that in mind, where there was no other gameplay element that they've presented. There was no portals. There was no flying. There was no this, that, or the other. It was just a map designed around the gravity walls. And I don't think that the multiplayer took off. Otherwise, we still hear about it.
Yeah, that's a shame too.
But it was kind
Yeah,
of,
that's a.
when you look at FPSs, it's kind of on the back end of that era, and we're starting to move into the Call of Duty FPS era of things, which it was a radical shift in the FPS kind of gameplay world. But that's a whole other podcast on its own.
It is sad to hear about this game having to not get a sequel. I understand it was already in development, but like having the sequel not come out, because I'm truly interested to see what they were gonna do with like the sequel for it.
Yeah, I was very interested. I would be more interested to know the narrative that they would have came up with for the second one, more than the gameplay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the gameplay takes us like a back seat here, because we're it's very Skyrim-esque. It's very standard, what have you. Just move around, Half-Life 2-ish, right? Um, I would say I'm more interested to know like what the thought process was of having the main character drive the fucking sphere into the sun and then have him be okay, like, and then
Yeah,
followed up
they
with.
did slap a lot of stuff together towards the end.
Yeah, yeah. It raises a lot of questions that we'll probably never get the answer to,
Not
not
and
like. Yeah.
I'm okay with it because I think the game we're covering next week, Prey 2017, is a much better game and offers a much more complete experience, from narrative to gameplay to philosophy and history. It is a more complete game, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that coming up next week.
Mhm.
So if you enjoyed today and you want to play Prey 2006, you can pick that up on the Xbox One marketplace. If you have the original 360 disc, you can pop that into any of your Xbox One, Xbox Series X, play that game today. PC, like we've been saying, you have to find a not so legal version, but they are out there. With a little bit of searching, you can still play this game as it once was. And I encourage you to. It's a nice little piece of history of the FPS genre. If you enjoyed what you watched and listened to today, we have more episodes and content coming out every day, or every other day, or every week. That's a bet. That's a more safer bet. There's stuff coming out a couple times every year.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes out when it comes out.
We got plenty of content over at the YouTube channel that ranges from talk shows like this to games and tabletop stuff that you may enjoy. If you wanted to check us out, Scott, where can they check you out in the meantime?
You can go ahead and check me out over at twitch.tv/ScootyWins, where 5:30 PST to 10 to 11 PST, I will be streaming for about like 5 hours or so, playing League of Legends. That's been pretty fun recently, been having a lot of interactions. So you can find me there just about every day, except for Sunday, where we're doing this in place of that. But that will be my resident home for the week.
Yeah, you're pushing for affiliate right now, and
Absolutely.
every day it's
Absolutely.
looking a little bit better.
Getting closer. We're getting closer on it. We're getting closer on it.
Awesome. And Alfie, where can we find you yet, or are you still elusive on the internet?
Yeah, I've been slacking. Oh, that'd be a good username. I could be the elusive man from Mass Effect. Yeah, I still want to do some achievement hunting. I don't know. I don't want to say for the third week in a row. Well, maybe this week, but maybe this week. I'll just fucking up and do it. It'll be fucking 6:22 on a Tuesday, and I'll be like, I'm streaming today. So, yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, when you do that, I'll be paying attention and try and get the word out as best I can through these
Microphones,
these
Podcast
ways,
episodes.
these pipelines. Yeah, I'll shout you out a week later on the episode.
That's
They
chill.
can go
yeah.
watch
Every
your
day I wake
VOD.
up. Every day I wake up, I scream your username as I fucking go outside and stretch.
But that's going to be it for us. If you want to check out anything more of myself, everything that I do is through the Paradise Podcast Network here on YouTube, on Twitter, and everywhere else. That's where you can find us. But yeah, until next episode, until next week with Prey 2017. Hope everybody has a good week. We'll see you in the next one.